Once upon a time, when the colonizers came to Africa, we didn't have the issue of color. Black and white did not exist in our languages. We were Africans. The missionaries were sent in with specific instructions to make the Africans believe that everything African was bad and everything European was better and more desirable. They put in motion a process of making us dislike that which was ours and go all out to embrace what the new invader was bringing to our beloved continent. I have to give it to them. They did a very good job at doing that. They hit us where it hurt the most, the mind. The missionaries taught us about white angels. The missionaries taught us about the devil who was black. The missionaries are white, like the angels. And that when we go to church, we must worship the white angels. And definitely want nothing to do with the black devil who looks like us. Subliminal messaging. Subliminal messaging. That's where we began the self-hate, the mistrust of each other, the lack of appreciation, an idea that is coming from your brother, an idea that is coming from your sister, because we are taught to dislike anything to do with us. That, my brothers and sisters, was level one, number one level of destroying the African, the mind. Then they followed it with colonization, a systematic way of saying, now that we have made the African believe that everything African was bad and everything European was better, let's take it to the next level. So it is that they met in Berlin and decided to chop up our country, our continent rather. So it is they met in Berlin, Germany, at the invitation of the then Chancellor of Germany, Bismarck, specifically to come up with a strategy that once again would see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated and dominated. They spent 4 months, 4 cold months in Berlin, Germany, from November of 1884 to February of 1885. And by the time they were done, our Africa had been chopped up into the tiny little countries that we see today. Countries that were intentionally divided in such a way that individually they will never survive. That individually they are easy to exploit. The whole purpose was to see to it that they can continue to exploit the rich natural resources that we were endowed with in our beloved continent. A united Africa is an Africa that is difficult to exploit. An Africa that speaks with one voice is an Africa that is difficult to exploit. So it is what they came up with, their strategy of 1884 during the Berlin Conference, is what gave us the Africa that we have today. An Africa that has countries like Benin, countries like Togo, countries like Central African Republic, Niger. As a matter of fact, all African countries. Then they turned around and said, okay, here we are. You are independent countries. Of course, during the Berlin Conference and during colonization, every one of those countries was controlled from those capitals in Europe until independence, when our Pan-African fathers began to say there's something wrong with this picture. We can no longer continue to be subservient in our own continent. Companies that ran the economies of all African countries were companies that belonged to the colonizer. If a country was colonized by the British, the majority of the companies that controlled the economies of those countries were British. If you were colonized by the Germans, German countries, German companies. If you were colonized by the French, French companies, and so forth. That, my brothers and sisters, they never gave up. They still continue to control the economies of their former colonies to this day.